Good evening, everybody. Melissa Tomlinson, she, her here. Tonight, we are NJ21 United, a caucus group of NJEA, and we are lucky to be having a conversation with a member of Save Our Schools Arizona. NJ21 United has been having some conversations about the shifting landscape of the fight to defend public education. And let's face it, after the nomination and approval of our new Secretary of Education, we know what's coming next. We know that we are going to have a battle against school vouchers because that is the national agenda. That is how they want to make sure our schools are no longer funded and that they need to keep closing. They want to make sure that our schools become even more segregated than they are. And we know that in New Jersey, this is especially an issue because we already sit within the top three of the most segregated states for public schools across the country. So this is a really huge concern. Not only that, but in case you haven't noticed, it's already a battle that's been ramping up in the background. There are groups already in New Jersey that are fighting and pushing hard for school vouchers. So I'm going to turn it over to Christina, who has joined us tonight, to go ahead and introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Christina Bustos. I am currently in a PhD program at ASU, and a school board, or sorry, not a school board, Save Our Schools Arizona board member. Um, I'm on the C3 side. I was an educator for 20 years, third through eighth grade. I have participated in my locals union for quite a few years. I've done various things throughout NEA and AEA, which is my state or state association. So thank you for having me here tonight.
Thank you so much for joining us. So the different members of NJ21 United are going to briefly say hi, and they have a lot of questions that came out of our own internal conversation, the questions that we have about vouchers, what it might look like, and how we can fight against them. Kelly, I think you're going to get started.
Yeah. Hi, Christina. So my questions are, what are school vouchers and how do they work? And who are the majority of recipients of school vouchers?
Okay, so in the state of Arizona, we have we call them the Empowerment Scholarship Accounts or ESAs. They are money that is sent from through an application process. It's like 16 pages or something. Families can apply to get these funds, and then those funds go directly, instead of to a school district, they actually go straight into an account where parents can withdraw funds from that specific account. And it depends, the amount of those depends on the needs of the child. So there is just the traditional, like your average child funding, and then there are special funding allocations for special needs, students with special needs. Um, and currently in Arizona, anyone that applies for this can take advantage of it. It's universal, meaning that you in some states and some places you have to have been attended a public school. You have to have been in a certain kind of like classification of schools. But in Arizona, it's anyone. You don't ever have had to have gone to a public school. So anyone can take a voucher if they fill out the application. And so I would say, as we're looking at right now through the data, the Grand Canyon Institute has helped a lot with this data. About 75% of our students have never been in a public school before. So those students that are taking money, 70 to 75% have never been in public schools. And they come from many of the more socioeconomically advantaged communities.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
So, Christina, the next question comes from me. In 2011 in Arizona, vouchers started largely as a push for students with disabilities or with special needs. But by 2022, all students became eligible for the voucher programs. Going back to 2011, what was the initial public reception to this across the state when vouchers were first introduced for special education students?
Um, I would first like to say that, like in 1994, there was a few things that happened that really magnified the impetus for all of this. So like there was they did away with op or having to go to your local school. So they did open enrollment. They established a charter board. There were the first STOs, which are tax credits that you could send. So that happened before 2011, right? So 2011 comes around. We've already started some of that. We've already started talking about choice. We've already started talking about the needs of students. And of course, we want to help children uh, get the services that they need through our schools. And so there was talk about the specific students. And for instance, like we have some specialized schools, students for students of students that are deaf and blind. There's other types of, community organizations that are schools that had really specific educational programs, and we wanted those, of course, to be able to people to be able to take advantage of those. And I think that really what ended up happening was that there was a warm reception for that. You did have to do some extra things. So like you had to have an IEP, you had to have certain things in place before that was allowed. And so I think that at that point, people knew that there was going to be more coming down the pipeline. And I think that was like a really just a wedge that was put in that just that started to knock things right open.
So, Christina, working off of that, what were kind of like those first warning signs? Was there any sort of like a PR push? What was the messaging? And what would you tell educators from other states to like look out for to, as like that first sign that vouchers might be coming?
For me, I'll actually never forget. I looked at something, and it's not the exact same thing, but I remember reading a study at one point where the Walton Foundation came into DC like 10 years before they ever considered having charter schools in this particular area. And then they just started applying grants and things like that. And for me, that was a warning sign, right? But in Arizona, we already had hundreds of charter schools. I think like when I was a teacher, when I started teaching in 2003, there was like 200 charters in Arizona at the time. So I would say it goes back to before that, you know, like how many charters you have, that's like an indication of how close you are. But I would say the American Federation for Children um, was another big signal because if you know, they are, proponents of school choice, DeVos, all that. The lawyer for one of the earliest court cases in Arizona around that was Clint Bullock, who is now a Supreme Court judge, and he became a Supreme Court judge with Doug Ducey um, when vouchers became universal and whatnot. And so yeah, I think that there's just like the more we talk about the each student school, parental choice, uh, taking care of the needs of the one child. I think that those are, while I do think that it's important to take care of the needs of the child, I often ask, like, well, what are we doing to ensure that in our public schools that that's happening? Like that's the signal. Those are the words. Privatization, obviously, the funding that's coming from, your Walton family, American Federation, those kind of places. Cato Institute.
Hey, Christina. Okay, I have a few questions for you, so I'm sorry to bombard you with them, and I will go over them with you again if you wish. So, do you think that school vouchers are fulfilling the work that they said they would? I know they came with a lot of promises. Um, how has general school funding been impacted by that?
Um, you know, I just remembered something. If people haven't read Milton Friedman's The Government's Role of Public Education, I would encourage people to read it or, take a look at, maybe he actually was on Donahue once, and you can find that on YouTube. But the reason I suggest this is because you know, economists and people that are capitalists and very interested in that type of thing, they have a very different idea around the purpose of education than I do, And so I think it's really important that we all like start to think, what is the role, what is the purpose of public education? And for me, it is a public good. It is something that we should, you know, um, give to all of our children because all of our children deserve to have these things. And while I say all of our children, I do sometimes think that proponents of vouchers do use that language. And then they do the opposite of what they propose that they would do, right? So fulfilling the work that was set out. Actually, I'm right now working on um, highlighting some of the language that has been used in, for instance, Arizona legislative sessions around the purpose of vouchers. And obviously, the purpose of vouchers is being said that all students can take advantage of highly excelling, wonderful programs that their parents choose for them to participate in, right? That's the idea of them. But if you were to poll the people in your neighborhood and ask them if they believe that their children's school is a good one, they would overwhelmingly say yes. So it's when we start to talk about that like larger group, the group think is where problems seem to be created a lot of the times in my mind. So I don't think that it does the job that it's intended, except for that it does the job to separate and further segregate, uh, you know, wealthy communities or people of privilege, various privilege, because it doesn't have to be specific to, one kind of thing or another. And then you asked about funding. Did you ask about that?
Yeah, I just asked, how has the school funding, been impacted?
Yeah, we are in a world of hurt. Again, one of the things that I think people don't realize is with 70 to 75% of our voucher funding going to people that have never been in a public school,
Right.
those funds have never been accounted for. They were never previously accounted for in a public school. So all of that's new money. Upwards of 600 million in 1 year.
Okay.
And if you look at Florida, it's similar. If not, if it might be worse for them, but I'm not exactly sure.
So, how has this impacted staffing? public schools cater more towards the students, especially if they have special needs. So how's that kind of impacted, vouchers impacted the levels of service that the students actually get in the schools?
So what we're seeing right now in Arizona is school closures all over the place.
Wow.
I would say it is the same also. Well, I'll talk about Arizona. In my district where we had 64 schools, and then a few years ago we had 57, and now we haven't talked about closing a school, but we did talk about we had to make a choice between funding music programs for us. It's a small segment because it was going to be like fourth, fifth, and sixth grade would get the choice of one, either music, general music, or a band or orchestra. So it was a small compromise there. Or keeping that funding and cutting $1.3 million from somewhere else. So they cut $1.3 million, or maybe they didn't cut it, maybe they had it in reserves. But then after the decision was made to keep music, because we value music in our district, right? We value the arts. Then there was an immediate riff of teachers. I think it was like 50-ish, but there's more to come, right? And we
Right.
haven't cut any schools yet, but we will be. I can almost guarantee it.
Right.
And you'll see in Roosevelt, which is in downtown Phoenix, they are closing 5 schools, and they are riddled with charter schools, and additionally families that are moving to vouchers, right? So it's it is a huge risk because the more vouchers we have, the fewer dollars we have,
Right.
and we still have the same needs, right? Special education services, bus drivers, as you well know, they are vital to our schools, cafeteria workers.
Yeah, everybody in the support area. So, I mean, how about the state budget? Is there any oversight or accountability for school vouchers?
I
Had to
giggle,
ask.
of
Had to
course.
ask.
Okay, so in Milwaukee and in DC, which were the first vouchers of its kind, there were many more um, things in place in their original implementation. For instance, they had to take the state testing. Any school that wanted to accept students with vouchers had to accept a voucher for the whole amount of the school, or the what tuition. They had to People that were receiving the vouchers had to be like 175% below the poverty line. And those would have been helpful here in Arizona. Now, over the years in Milwaukee and in DC, those things were eroded, those caps were lifted, those things began to erode. Um, but we didn't have any of them. We don't have any of them. They don't keep track of the data. We don't know who it's going to. They just came up with something that they are going to blanket allow funding for X amount of dollars before they even look at it. They had one person checking the receipts of these payments that were coming out. So we have no accountability measures. There's been 2 very well known, like there was a ghost children case that spent over $500,000 for five children, I think. And then there was another one where it was like $63,000, I think. But both of those, are is a large loss for our state budget. And those are just two that we found that were found. But overall, we do have a more conservative legislature. And so we fund, I think, like 7,000-ish dollars per student per year. And so that's like what the base is. But they're looking for more and more ways to cut that to go to other, to go to the parents or to be a tax credit. So it's horrific. We are in a world of hurt. That's why schools are shutting. That's why classes are sitting at 40 kids.
Wow. Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Hi, Christina. So my question for you is, how has public education changed in your state? I know one of the things you just shared was class size, but how else? Like maybe public education before vouchers and now after with vouchers.
I would say overall, the stress level for teachers is just unbearable. And I imagine that the stress level for our custodians and our bus drivers is similar, because, obviously there are fewer people to take these positions because they can be cut. But I think we we were on the ground floor of alternative teacher preparation programs. I'll be nice about it as I'm saying those words. And while yes, I realize that some people do come to us through alternative pathways, I think there was some sort of a false narrative created about how there just weren't enough teachers around. And I often fight back by saying there weren't enough people that were willing to be treated like crap, given little to no money, forced to work 60 plus hours a week at their job for the amount that you were giving us, right? I left the classroom after 18 years and I was a coach for 2 years. And in that time, I can honestly tell you that I don't know how people stay anymore unless they are feeling loved and supported and like they have a manageable class size and they have appropriate amounts of time to prepare their classroom, to be in their classroom, to not be in professional development. And our state was trying ever so hard to, I don't know if districts were trying to like make sure that they proved to the public that we were doing a good job, but I think that's what happened. And so then they started to micromanage all of our time. So I mean, I think that with the support of the union, like we can hold on to some of those things with the support of like groups of, caucus members from different places, people from all over the nation. I think we can hold on to some of the what public education used to be, but it is really hard when you're constantly belittled. I think honestly, COVID really impacted us in a way that they used vouchers as the alternative to being forced by the mandates of COVID. So, I didn't mention this, but also vouchers can go to homeschooling parents. So, during COVID, when parents were like, well, forget it, we're home anyway, we might as well homeschool our kid or whatever it is that they decided. I think that really created like that another piece of the wedge. And it really did a number on us.
Hi, Christina. So I would, just to wrap it up, like, how did you organize in the midst of all of that? What did you do in your state to organize against this school voucher campaign? And in hindsight, what would you have done differently at the time? And then I know you did talk a little bit more about like warning signs, but what wisdom do you have for other states that, that seem to be staring down this school voucher threat right now across our nation?
Well, first of all, I would say we had some really great leadership, both at AEA, Arizona Education Association, as well as, Arizona Educators United, and Save Our Schools Arizona. When we had our walkout, I think that's when a lot of teachers started realizing their power. 2018, that's when that happened for us, and it was just a really big moment. And at that time, we carried, the tax on the top 1%, and we carried the stopping the vouchers. I should mention that in every state, the public always defeats vouchers. The public always says no to them. We are the first state that said, well, we don't really care if you don't like them. And they did them anyway. And so I think that, like I really found my own power within the movement, the Red for Ed movement, but also being involved in, I was literally just a member that I never even did anything. I'd done canvassing and things like that for, politicians in Arizona, but I had never really attended a meeting. I had never attended a meeting. So I would say for all those teachers that are like, I don't know where to get involved, go to a meeting. Go to your local union meeting, go to your local site meeting. You don't even have to go to your local meeting overall. Go to your site. Say, how do I get involved? And I would say, like, we just started connecting and we never stopped connecting. I will forever be grateful for, Rebecca Gorelli, Marisol Garcia. My dear friend Kathy Gomez, who, like, we weren't even ever in the same school at the same time, but we were connected, and so we just continued to develop these relationships with people, and we've just never stopped. Like now, we're getting the word out by Save Our Schools goes in tables at events to talk about the state of public education. We are talking about voter registration. We do that quite frequently. So I would say if you're not in if you do not have that need for fighting vouchers right now, start building with something else. Really. I have people that I will never, ever forget because of the connections that we've made through this. What would I have done differently? Or what would I would have tried harder to stop the American Federation for Children. I would have done, obviously that's like super hindsight because I was in high school at that point. That was a long time ago. But we should start talking more about those people that are funding this type of work, this privatization, this large picture privatization. Now, with my PhD, that's what I'm actually researching right now. I'm doing a project on vouchers and the impact of vouchers, and it's clear that there's no one way to like talk about vouchers because they're not the same in any place. And every state is a further, like, it's a testing ground, right? So the restrictive vouchers that went into Milwaukee were not the same as the ones that went into DC. Why? Because they were able to try things out and see what they could get rid of. They start very restricted and then they loosen those restrictions. If you currently have vouchers and there are stipulations around them, you need to fight to keep those stipulations. Because once they get open like ours, I don't know how we will rein them back in, except for by flipping the state legislature. And so that's my other thing that I would say now to all of you. I know that not every state does canvassing work in the same way, but canvas, table, talk to people that you are scared of and that you're not scared of, because you have to start practicing somewhere. Read Democracy in Chains, read that. Read Dark Money, because this is where it's coming from.
Christina, I want to thank you. You said so many things, like a lot of the I knew because I've been friends with some of you all for years, but some I did not know. So I really do want to thank you for your insight tonight. Couple of parallel points that I wanted to pull out for people in New Jersey. A lot of those warning signs that you stated are things that we use here, and we hadn't thought twice about it, right? We have a type of school choice in this state where students can choose what school they want to go to if it's a school choice school, right? And we all thought it was great because we have schools with magnet programs and some different offerings. But in hindsight, I'm wondering, was this one of the first steps? Because now that school choice language is being used and being co-opted to talk towards school vouchers here. We have a great parent group in New Jersey as well, and I do want to thank them for the work that they've been doing. We have the New Jersey Public Education Coalition, and that kind of seems to be our type of Save Our Schools Arizona. So we're thankful for those parents and community members that are speaking up to defend education all the time. I really hope people watching this video listen to you when you say get involved any way that you can, canvassing, having conversations, making sure that you're educated in where all of these battles are coming from, and is always making sure that we're uniting to defend that common good that public education is for our students and for our future generations in this country. At this point in time, in my mind, it's one of our last saving graces for the future of the United States. So thank you very much for your time. And I want to read this dissertation when you have it published.
Well, thanks. And I do want to say that, like, it hurts me to say that, like, school choice is one of those things, but it is one of those things. My son goes to a choice school also. And I've thought long and hard about, but it's a public school that they just became, their own public school. And I want people to know that, like, the hope isn't that we take choice away. It's that we empower families and teachers to take the power back in their own school. And just a shout out to KNEA, which is the Kansas, they have Save Neighborhood Schools from Vouchers is what their shirt says. And if you go, they have a merch store. So if you go to their merch store, you can buy one of these also. I wear it proudly because they're my like, I've never even been to Kansas, but I love them. So I'm gonna give them a shout out too.
That's great. And if you would do me a favor, if you would send me that link, I'll make sure that we share it. And, hey, there's shirts that we can wear here in New Jersey as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. I hope everybody out there has a good night. Thank you, NJ21 United and Christina, for this great conversation.